Hey guys, it's Kat and I'm back today to finally do my next check-in for my project Eyemageddon series. So this is my eyeshadow palette declutter series where I go through the majority of my eyeshadow palettes this year and I test them out. I get my gut reaction. If I need to wear them for a few days or a week to get an idea of what I think about them, then I do that and I come back and I'll give you a recap on what I think about the palettes I tried, some of the looks I created and whether or not I'm going to keep them. Now this is quite late. I think I was supposed to do this about a month ago, but I've been testing a lot of eyeshadow palettes. I decided I wanted to test all my Anastasia Beverly Hills eyeshadow palettes and I wanted to have it in one video rather than two. So it took me a long time. And also I think the problem was that because I really like the formula of these, it has taken me quite some time to figure out what shades do I like, what color stories do I like, what can I get rid of, like all of this sort of, it's taken a bit of time. I believe I've documented 20 looks, so that's what I'll be showing on the screen. I have used this more though, sometimes I just don't take photos of them. And I have to say there's some palettes I've used a lot more than others. And the last palette that I used today, and I've got on my eyes today, and I'll show you a photo close up soon, and I'm dropping everything, is actually the Alyssa Edwards palette. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you and say I have only used this palette once, and that's today. So there are two palettes in this series that I opened for the first time testing this out, and the reason that's the case, like it sounds very weird, but it also shows why I'm trying to do this series. I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes, I have a lot of makeup, so I want to minimize my collection to a point where I want to use everything, and I can reach in a drawer and everything I'm enticed to use. I bought these on sale. I was actually going to avoid buying these because they weren't really something I was super interested in. I do love Alyssa Edwards, the drag queen, I think she's great. But there were sort of things I'm like, I don't really need. But then when I saw them on sale, I thought I'll pick them up because I'll complete my collection. I no longer care about completing collections of makeup, but this is a symptom of a time where I did. So I have 10 of this format of palette because I was like, well, I've bought the first few, I may as well keep buying them. And that's why I'm in the situation I'm in where I've got 10 palettes and I only realistically love one or two. I think only one. So I need to do something about it, and that's what this year is all about. So I had these stashed away. I bought them on sale for my collection and I had actually never used them. Now throughout this series, I've used the Carli Bybel palette quite a few times, and the Alyssa Edwards one I've only used today. Even though I've only used this once, and realistically I would have loved to have used it another 3 or 4 times to get a really good idea of it. There's a pattern of how I feel about these palettes and a pattern throughout this whole series how I feel about eyeshadow palettes in general. So if you've been watching this series, you'll know what I'm probably gonna do with these palettes. Yeah, you're right. You thought you're on the money. But I am gonna go through every single palette and let you know what I think about them and show you looks I've created with them, and then ultimately tell you what I'm gonna do with them. Now I'm going to start on a positive. I'm going to talk about my all-time favorite ABH palette and one of my probably top 5 palettes ever. I'm so bummed that this is holiday limited edition. Mind you, it was around for like 2 years, but I wish this was a palette that was permanent because I would probably repurchase the heck out of it. And it'll probably become like one of my everyday staples, not being afraid to hit pan on it because there's an opportunity to buy it again, but that opportunity is gone. This is the Sultry palette. It is the most glorious palette. I love it so much. If you've got it, take it out, use it, give it some love because it is beautiful. What I love about this so much is just the color story. It's cool tone browns, some sort of, I would say these are cool tone golds, like bronzy sort of golds. They're not like yellowy golds. They're more sort of like muted. There's some nice shimmery sort of nude pinks, browns. There's a beautiful silver. There's a cool toned matte gray, which normally I wouldn't really go for, but works beautifully. I love the combination of either putting something cool on the lid and warm in the crease, or something warmer on the lid and cool in the crease. I think it works really beautifully together. Probably the one shade that I'm not like obsessed with is the matte coral, but it actually does pair really nicely with this palette. So this is a palette that I can use every single day, and every time I use it, I love the effect of it. Not only is the formula beautiful, so overall, I really like Anastasia Beverly Hills formula. I don't think it's for everyone, and it probably doesn't work on some people's body chemistry, but on me, it works really nicely. The mattes are quite powdery, so you do kick up a lot in the pan. So you have to be quite careful, and you just have to like dab your brush in once because it's not a firm pan, it's a very soft pan. But they blend really nicely. You can build them up to a beautiful bold effect if you want to, or you can blend it out to a sheer effect. So the mattes I think are really lovely and versatile, and the shimmers are really bold and intense. These are serious shimmers. So like if I get this shade here, which is Cinder, which is just this beautiful sort of, again, cooler tone bronze. This is like my one and done everyday sort of shade. I love these sort of cooler tone bronzes. And a lot of these shades you can just throw on as like a quick look, or you can definitely get deeper and more intense, and more sort of like intense with a shimmer like the silver if you want something that's a little bit more like nighttime. So you can even go black, gray and silver and have a really bold effect if you want to. But these are super, super, super pigmented, and like these don't mess you around. Like these give you that beautiful shine. Look, hang on, I'm trying to catch the morning light. So they're like metallic shimmers, but you don't need much product. They blend on really nicely because they are that smoother formula. I love it. Everything about it I love. And this is my brown color story dream. It's cool tones. There's a little bit of warm tones. If you want to go a little bit warmer in the look, you can use birch. So that's more of that sort of warmer caramel tone. So it warms up a look. Cool down a look with slate, or sort of neutral is twig. Everything about this I love. It's my favorite ABH palette. And whenever I want a beautiful cool tone effect, this is what I reach for, because I'm never disappointed in the looks I've created. Hopefully I've had on the screen some looks that I've created over the past couple of months using this palette, and I'll show you what shades I used as well. I love it. I think it's such a great palette. And I really only need to use this like once to be like, yeah, this is staying, because whenever I pull it out, I'm obsessed with it. There's no way you can pry this out of my cold dead hands. I'll be buried with this because I actually really, really love this palette. This is, yeah, awesome. If you like cool tone browns, and yeah, hopefully if you have this, just pull it out and wear it, enjoy it, have a great eyeshadow day, and yeah, it's your reminder that this is a great palette. Now, one thing I do want to say about the rest of the 9 palettes is generally the quality is very nice. So it still has that quite soft, powdery, but blendable and pigmented matte formula, the really, really intense but buttery, smooth shimmers. There are some exceptions, like often there's like, not often, but occasionally there's like a lighter shade that might seal up and be a little bit chunky. But overall, the formula of these are really, really nice. They work for me. I like them. They're easy to apply. Mine has a tiny bit of fallout. You can sort of get really stunning looks pretty quickly. So yeah, overall, I like the formulas of these. So I'm going to go from my favorite, which is the Sultry, to probably my least favorite, which is the Riviera. This palette, besides matching my top a little bit, I love the concept of this Riviera. I love this sort of like nautical sort of stripes and the gold. I think it's really cool. I just don't see it in here. I just don't see it. They don't even have a navy blue. They've got a dark purple, and they've got, I feel like this palette's really, really wrong. There's only sort of like 1 or 2 shades that I would keep out of this, which is probably Yacht, which is a shimmery brown, which dime a dozen, there's heaps in these palettes. And also this sort of mustardy matte brown, which is Cabana. I think I did do a look using those two, which hopefully I'll have on the screen. The rest, this palette is so jumbled. I remember reviewing this and being like, what the actual fuck is this? So I found that a lot of the shimmers are quite cool toned. You've got a shimmery blue, and they're a bit confusing as well. This is almost like what looks like a cobalty blue base with like a silvery sort of shimmer or purpley shimmer. You've got a really shimmery yellow gold. When I talk about the Sultry gold being cool toned, You can see it there versus like yellow gold. I know which one I want to reach for on a daily basis. It's not this one. This one is like a gray blue with like a gold shimmer in it, so it looks interesting, but really it doesn't translate very well on the eye. It just looks a little bit muddy and a little bit dull. You got a shimmery pink, shimmery teal, and then you got the brown and a matte white. Now the majority of this row is quite cool toned, but the majority of the mattes down the bottom are quite warm toned. So you have a peach, a mustard, another darker peach, a bright pink, a more muted pink, a purple, and a brown. So if you actually want a cohesive look, like you want to be able to reach for this blue shade, which could look stunning just as like the statement eye, there's nothing you can really blend it out with to complement it. It actually fights the look. So I found this when I was reviewing it really frustrating to use. There are the occasional shade that's quite pretty, but overall, I just found this to be such a jumbled mess, and it doesn't reflect the inspiration whatsoever. It is very confused, and I didn't like this palette. So this is my least favorite. It's definitely going to go. It is what it is. Now, when it comes to the rest of the palettes, now I was quite surprised using these. Again, there's some standout individual shades where I'm like, that's a nice shade. I'll definitely use that. Overall, every palette I had issues with. Let's talk about the Modern Renaissance, which is like the palette that put Anastasia Beverly Hills on the map for eyeshadow palettes. They did have the Mario palette, I think, before that, which was quite popular, but they were mainly well known for their brow products until they released this. Now, this looks super boring and super dull and super basic and whatever, but at the time it was like revolutionary. This was back when the beauty community was quite vibrant, quite fun. Everyone was quite positive, and this kind of makeup was changing the game. Prior to this, it was like naked palettes and a lot of champagne pinks, stuff like that. Any sort of reds or oranges or even this bright pink or these mauve tones, you didn't really find them in palettes. It was mainly just like this kind of situation. So this was an absolute revolutionary palette in terms of changing the game and bringing color into daily life. So I would actually thank Anastasia Beverly Hills for making wearable color a thing and then getting into brighter colors and whatnot. I feel like that path started with this palette, and this was the type of palette that I used to go out and see people that used to love makeup. Like I used to go to events or whatever, and you'd be able to tell if someone was wearing this because they have pink and they'd have some orange and they'd have some red, and you're like, are you wearing the Modern Renaissance? And like, yes. And I'm like, so am I. Like everyone was wearing it, and it was a really distinct palette. It was copied a lot, and the color stories were like a lot of people took inspiration from this palette. Right now it looks super boring, but back then it was very, very like amazing. Using this, I struggled with it this past month or two, mainly because it is so matte. I love a good shimmer. This is actually a well-worn palette. Some of the mattes have been worn a lot. So this has been well loved, and I do love some of the shades. I feel like the mattes are done really well. The shades are really pretty. And if you like a darker sort of autumn tone palette, this is really, really nice. But realistically, it only has 3 shimmers. It's got Vermeer, which is more of a pinky, cool toned champagne shade, which is probably too frosty on me. Then you have a soft gold called Primavera. So this is more of a champagne gold. And then you have this one over here, which is Antique Bronze. It is essentially like a satin, so it's a dark brown with a little bit of shimmer in it, but on the eye it doesn't really show up shimmery. So I would say that this has 2 shimmers in it, and they're both quite light and they're both quite frosty. So you only get quite limited looks with this exclusively. If you want to have like an inner corner highlight, cool, you've got a cool and a warm, but it's designed to be a matte palette, and I don't wear mattes on a daily basis. Like I wear mattes on a daily basis, but not predominantly mattes. So this, I actually struggled using. I was like, this is no longer something I want to reach for, especially over the, what do you call it? The Sultry palette. That one shits all over this. Let's just put it out there. But there are some nice colors in here. I still love this sort of mauvey matte shade. I think that's gorgeous. There's some really pretty shades here, but it is no longer a coveted item. It brings me back a lot of memories, and I respect what it was. But again, I don't need this. So I'm going to try to follow the timeline of when these were released. And I do want to mention again that they did have different palettes prior to releasing the Modern Renaissance, but this format was so popular that this is the format that took off, and this is the format that I was collecting. After the Modern Renaissance, it was the debacle of the Subculture palette. Now, this is one of the original ones, so they did reformulate it. They designed this to be a lot softer, so you could pack a lot more pigment on it. I'm just dropping brushes absolutely everywhere. This palette, look, my issue with it was there's a couple of shimmery shades. Again, this is very similar to the Modern Renaissance. Hang on, I'm trying to figure out how to do this lighting because I want to accurately show the colors, but I'm also struggling with this morning light. I usually film in the afternoon. Anyway, this was more of like a grungier color story, which I really like. This did take the same sort of format, not only packaging and that felt packaging or that velvety sort of packaging, but also it was predominantly mattes. There's 3 shimmers here. One is a very sort of soft bronzy color. It is quite, yeah, you can disrupt the pan quite a lot. And then there's these 2 sort of iridescent topper shimmers. One is white and has like a pink shift to it, and one is yellow and has like a green shift to it. These seal up. So what I mean by sealing up is when you put your brush in the pan or you put your finger in the pan, it creates like a greasy layer over the top that makes it really hard to then pick up the product. So the pan seals up. So these were complete fails because they were really hard to use, and the rest is matte. Now, I love some of these colors. I do love these sort of dark teals and these sort of eggplant purples. I think they're really, really pretty. I think the color story was really interesting, and again, taking things to a new direction that the industry wasn't really releasing. So I really like this. In terms of formula, again, look, there were issues that it was so soft that people could just swirl their brush and hit pan really quickly, and that is an issue. These are soft, you have to be very careful with them, but it's still workable. My main issue was that I found that they sat a little bit patchy on the eye sometimes, and when you layered different colors, they would like fight each other. So they wouldn't layer nicely and blend together. They would just, like, you'd mix a couple of colors together and all of a sudden it'd turn like this weird gray color. I think this was fast tracked because of the popularity of Modern Renaissance, that they were just like, let's bring out something and keep the momentum going. But I don't think it had been tried and tested enough. But there's elements of this that I like, but overall, this is not a palette I've used for years and years. And if I didn't ever use it again, I really wouldn't be too sad because I do have these nice teals and these eggplants and whatnot in better formulas. So yeah, I like the color story. I get it. It sort of matches my scarf. But it is not something that I was really inspired to use a lot over the last couple of months. All right, for holiday that year, they brought out the Prism palette. This was limited edition. And this one I think is interesting, but again, I like some colors. I think this paired really nicely with the what do you call it? The Subculture palette. I think they've got mattes in here that pair well with shimmers in here. So I think they were sort of trying to bring these out to work well together, because if I open this up, you'll see some very similar sort of color stories. There's a lot of they've got the jewel tone greens, they've got some nice golds, they've got, you know, this acid sort of yellow. They've got colors that would work really nicely with the mattes in that last palette. So I liked this, I think, more than the Subculture. I feel like mainly because it has more shimmers and that's what I like to reach for. But again, using this, there are standout shades like that are pretty, like that green is stunning. I don't even know if I used this month, but it's a really gorgeous green. It is something that, like, it's got a purple shift to it. So where I'm seeing now, it's purple, but then it sort of has this jewel tone green. It does have a blackened base, so it is a bit dark. So there are some really pretty unique shades in here, but I think my issue with this was it was quite repetitive with the Modern Renaissance. Modern Renaissance has a dark matte brown. It has a shade very similar to this matte here. It has the same sort of shade as this mauve. There's a lot of overlap between the palettes. So besides the odd interesting shade like the acid yellow or the jewel tone green, this wasn't one that I needed to reach for too often. So again, pretty, and I didn't have any issues with the formula or using it. It's just not something I want to reach for on a daily basis. Then came Soft Glam and Norvina. I think Soft Glam was first, followed by Norvina, and these are sort of created by the creators of Anastasia Beverly Hills. I believe soft glam is what Anastasia sort of wants to wear on a daily basis, and her daughter Norvina wanted to wear this on a daily basis. So these are both fairly nude palettes. Soft glam is soft glam. It is nice. There are nice brown tones. It's nude. This did have some repeats from the Modern Renaissance. So I think this Tempera one and also Cypress Umber are like taken from the Modern Renaissance. This is a color story I can really get behind, but again, similar to the Riviera, I feel like the shimmers and the mattes, they don't fight because they're all nudes, so they all go well together, but I feel like you've got a lot of light shimmers, and these sort of shimmers, glistening and fairy, again, they're sort of sheer topper shades that can look a little bit light and frosty on me. So they're not the sort of shades I reach for on a daily basis. These are more the shades that I'd put on an inner corner. And then you sort of jump to sort of dark or gold. I like mid-tone shades, and I found that this was either really light or got into quite dark pretty quickly. But it all behaved quite nicely. These sort of bottom row, the browns, were all very, very similar. So there's a lot of repetitiveness going on here, but I love, like, Mulberry is a beautiful matte sort of burgundy shade. Sultry is a really beautiful shimmery, almost like burgundy bronze shade. The gold here is really nice as well because it's more of a subtle gold. Again, not that bam yellow gold, but it's very, very sparkly and twinkly and nicely pigmented. So it's a really flattering gold. So again, overall, I don't need all shades in this palette, but I think there are some that I would love to save because they're beautiful. Like even just taking those three there and putting them in a different palette. Orange Soda's are quite a nice shade. It's quite a unique shade to this sort of range where it's this sort of pastel sort of peachy shade. It's quite pretty, but yeah, it's not my perfect palette, but it's quite nice. Norvina palette is sort of similar, but instead of it being more browns, this is more purpley and pinky tones. I remember reviewing this and thinking the purples don't work well together. So you've got this sort of very, very pink tone purple and this sort of dark purple, and then you have this like periwinkle bluey purple. And again, if you want to amplify these tones, you want a more mauvey shade to blend it out, but you were sort of stuck with this sort of blue, what looked blue on the eyes. So again, it was a bit disjointed, a bit strange. Some of the formulas in here are quite nice. This rose gold shade, again, is a nice sort of burgundy, bronzy, rosy shade, but it's quite chunky. So we were getting into some chunky territory here, but beautiful sort of bronzes, some nice warm browns, a beautiful cool tone brown. So there are some nice shades here, but it was getting a little bit sort of, I don't know, wasn't my favorite thing. Then they peaked at Sultry, love it, talked about it. Then they released the Riviera, not so in love. Then they started getting back into the collaborations. They had done collaboration palettes before the Modern Renaissance, but not in this format. The Alyssa Edwards came out, and again, like I said, this is the first time I've used it. It is a bold, bold, bold palette. Now, technically this hasn't gone off because the use by date is from when you open it, and I only recently opened it. There is like a nude sort of quad here. There's a white matte. Mine has gone, the pan has gone a little bit rusty. I don't know what it is. That's the only shade out of all these palettes that has like a rusty pan. It's very strange. I'll zoom in and show it to you, but I'm not going to try that. It also has a matte black and matte dark brown. So you've got some staples here, and then you've got some bright, bright colors. I am wearing this today, and I'll have a photo of what I'm wearing on the screen, so hopefully you can see it a bit better. I know the lighting is not the best. It probably doesn't show up the best. I am wearing Inspire, which is the only sort of nude shimmer shade. It's a very soft champagne gold. It's not very interesting. It's not as buttery and smooth as some of the other ones in other palettes. I'm also using a little bit of HOE or Ho and a little bit of the Supreme to blend that out. So that's what's mainly on the lid. And then I'm using this bright purple, which I love this shade. This is Believe. I'm using this as a liner today. So I might zoom in and show you that in a second, but this shade is gorgeous. It matches my nails. I love this sort of really vibrant blue toned like electric purple. I think it's really gorgeous. So this palette I can't really talk much about because I've barely used it. I do like some of the shades. I love plummy, dark plummy mattes. I think they're gorgeous. I do like mauvey shades. wasn't super impressed with this shimmer, like they're throwaway shades. But I feel like if I was to save anything in this palette, it would be a few of the key sort of bright colors that I think are done really nicely in this palette, but I don't use them on a daily basis. So this I was sort of keeping and hoarding for some reason, but I definitely don't need it, but there are a few shades of interest where I'm like, I don't wear this all over the lid on a daily basis, but I can definitely turn them into liners because it's gorgeous as a purple liner. I'll zoom in and show you. So hopefully you can see that sort of nude shimmer gold shade is nothing to write home about. It's kind of bland and kind of boring, but that like electric purple, and it matches my nails, is a gorgeous color for a liner. And even though I like to wear nudes on a daily basis, I could wear this as a liner every single day because I think it's really fun. And this is how I like to inject a bit of color into my looks, either just like on the lower lash line or in the outer corner or as a liner. And I think this is really, really beautiful. And I could do the same with that blue there. So yeah, that's what I'm wearing today. Continuing on with the collaborations, in short succession, there was the Jackie Aina palette and also the Carli Bybel palette. Now, with the Jackie Aina palette, I quite like this. I think as a whole, it's one of my favorite palettes. It's quite dark on me, which makes sense. It's designed by someone with deeper skin, so richer colors. It makes perfect sense. This is more of a nighttime palette for me, and I do like the formulas. There are some really beautiful. Oh, this sparkly gold, gorgeous. I think I took a video showing this because it's like pressed glitter, but like finely milled pressed glitter, and it is stunning. It's not their typical metallic shimmer formula. It's very, very, very sparkly, and it is like, add it to any look and it just makes everything look fun and elevated and gorgeous. This does have some, like it has one of those sort of chunky white iridescent shades, which I don't love. I feel like they're a bit yuck. It's got some nice purples. I think I could definitely skip the pink. This like nice metallic red is really pretty, and it's one that we haven't seen in their past palettes. So really nice metallic red, which can be fun as just, again, like inner corner as a liner, outer corner. It pairs really nicely with golds and bronzes. So that's a really pretty color that I would definitely save if I was to save anything in here. We're getting into some more browns. There's one that's like a MAC blue brown pigment-ish. So it's got that warm matte brown base, but a sort of bluey green shift to it. They're like the original duochromes. I've seen them time and time again. So even though it is nice, it's not something I need to keep. This light gold, very chunky, not my favorite. So even though I think this overall works as a nice palette because it is cohesive and the shades work well together, whereas I found a lot of their other palettes, I like the formula. I might like shades individually, but there's nothing to really pair or make that shade work with other shades in the palette. This is much more of a cohesive palette. So Jackie tested this, tried it, knows that the red works with the pink, works with the gold, works with the browns, works with the purples. Everything works together, and I like that about this palette. But again, I probably would reach for half the shades, and half the shades I'd give a bit of a skip. So yeah, there's some nice things in this and some things I'm just like, yeah, I can pass on. Last palette is the Carli Bybel palette. This came shortly after the Jackie Aina one, like a week or two after. They didn't give Jackie much time to enjoy her collab without another one coming out. This is the last palette I bought from the Anastasia range, and also it was one that I only used for the first time testing out this range. And it's, again, I just think I bought it on sale when it was sort of almost on its way out. I didn't bother reviewing it because it was so old, but I wanted to have it. This is quite a cool toned and pink toned palette, so not generally something I would reach for. There are some beautiful shades in here, like Libra is a nice sort of grayish shimmer. It's quite pretty if you like cool toned shades. You can sort of make this a little bit more smoky and cool toned by pairing it with this shade here, or you can make it a little bit more purple pairing it with this. So there are some well thought out color pairings here. There's also a new formula that I don't think has been in other palettes. It's more of this shimmery, sparkly formula that looks really, really, really sparkly on the lid. So these almost look like a pressed glitter. I love that sort of old gold, slightly olive tone shade. Really, really pretty. And then OA, this one here, is a little bit chunkier, but it is again sort of like a glitter. So there's a little bit, something a little bit different with this palette. I do like elements of this, but again, there's some that I just probably would not reach for, like those bluey sort of shades I probably wouldn't reach for too often. I will have some looks that I created using this palette. I think I did use this quite a few times because I was trying to figure out, do I like the formulas? Do I like the color stories? Is this something that I can keep the whole palette of and be happy using? Overall, I don't love everything about it. I probably love half the shades, but I do like that this is a different sort of color story for Anastasia Beverly Hills, and there was slightly different textures. They were taking it to a different place. Yeah, but it's still not the Sultry for me. So after all that, what am I going to do? I'm sure you know by now. Firstly, I'm going to keep the Sultry because this is like it's like one of my perfect palettes, and if anyone asks me what is like a great cool tone palette, I'd say if you can access this, it is. It gives you beautiful looks every time. I'll link my review down below. It was years and years ago, but every look I created, I loved. Even the shades I didn't think I was going to love looked really flattering and worked really beautifully. So I'm keeping this. When it comes to all the other palettes, look, you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to customize my own Anastasia palettes. Now, it's going to take a bit of research. I have not looked into this. All of these palettes have at least one shade that I really like from it. So I'm going to Franken palette this mess. I'm going to pull them apart. I'm going to swatch them all, rearrange them, and create 2 to 3 palettes of shades that I know I'm going to use and of formulas that I really, really like. So I was just using these throughout the past months and going, look, there are elements of these that I love, 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 and elements of these that I hate, 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 hate. Get rid of the hate. There's no point having hate in my life, especially not with eyeshadow palettes. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time doing some research about the best way to depot these without destroying them. I might even try to find a magnetic palette. If I have to completely destroy the packaging, I'll just get a empty palette and stick these in. It is what it is. That might take me a little while to do. So what I will do is I'll hold this video off until I know that that video has been filmed. The next video that should be up will be that particular video. So we'll see if we can declutter quite a few palettes. So at the end of that next video, I'll also be able to tell you how many palettes I've decluttered because right now I don't know. That's it for me. I will see you in the next video, which will be the customizing video, and I'll have all the products I talked about listed in the description box, as well as my past videos in this series if you wanted to see other things that I've decluttered or customized, because I have gone there. It takes a while, it's quite messy, but the results are generally pretty good, so that's why I keep doing them. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.